Hi, my name is Danika, and I will skip the excuses for why I've been gone for a little while because who likes watching that part of a video? Instead, I'm going to talk about some of the first queer books that I discovered, and that's because when I made the LGBTQIA booktuber tag, Jessie from Cup of Books suggested this as one of the questions, and because it was after I already made my initial video, I didn't get a chance to answer it in my video, but I've really been enjoying watching other people's and what they've said to this question. So I thought I had enough to say that I could probably make a video on its own about it. What was the first time I encountered an LGBTQIA+ character in fiction? I have a terrible memory, so for most questions like this I don't remember, but this one I think I do. I was about 7, and at the time my mom was principal of this school for deaf and hard of hearing kids, so it was its own private school, I guess, and when there were Pro D days at the public school that I went to, I would often go along with my mom to this other school. And I remember being there in their little library nook. There were only a few bookcases from what I remember, and pulling out this book and reading it, and I have to assume it was Heather Has Two Mommies by Leslie Newman. I know it was a picture book and that it was about a family where this kid had 2 moms. And I clearly remember closing the book and thinking, so that's a thing. It didn't seem surprising. It also didn't feel like there was a sense of community or belonging. I didn't really relate to that at all. It was just a small moment that seems larger in retrospect. It was, as far as I can remember, my first glimpse of queerness, and it was also really an example of how queer lit can normalize things, because it just seemed like this sort of minor thing that I had learned about the world. It was new, but it was also everyday and not really remarkable. Like, oh, okay, some families have 2 moms. Fine. I wouldn't recognize my own romantic feelings for a girl until years later when I was 14. But I still think that book made the world a better place for me to come out in. I think encountering that book helped me reach a, so that's a thing, conclusion about my own sexuality. So that's the first time that I can remember that I encountered a queer book. But as for the first queer book I read after I knew I was queer, I'm pretty sure I read some young adult lesbian books. I've had a library thing account for almost 10 years, I think, so I have a bit of a record of what I was reading at the time, but I didn't keep it completely updated. So I'm pretty sure the first ones I read were young adult, but I don't remember those. What I do remember is this conversation I had with my mom, and it was at least a year after I came out, and she asked me if I had ever read Ruby Fruit Jungle by Rita Mae Brown, and I said no. I don't think I'd even heard of it at the time. And she said, "And you call yourself a lesbian?" And of course after that I had to find the book and read it, and I loved it. But more than that, that conversation made me realize that lesbian literature was a thing. This was a body of work. And it made me realize that my queerness and my love of books, which has always been the passion of my life, could be combined. And that set me on the path that I really haven't left since. It's what helped me to create the Lesbrary, and then later Fuck Yeah Lesbian Literature, and later this booktube channel, and all of the other things that have sprung up around those. I think those were significant firsts in my life and in my reading life, but I think more significant were the books that came after it. Not the first good queer book I read, but the 2nd and the 5th and the 100th, and the ones that made me realize there are way more out there. I have a lot more to read. This wasn't a fluke, and I have a lot to look forward to. When I first started the Lesbrary, and when I first started reading lesbian literature, when I discovered it as a genre, I was surprised and happy that they existed, but I still thought of it as something very small. I thought of the list of books that I've seen that were the same 10, maybe 20, maybe 50 books. They seemed like something I would eventually read my way through. So at the time when I started the Lesbrary, I kind of tongue-in-cheek but kind of seriously called it The Quest to Read Everything Lesbian. And now I'm very happy to know that there's no way that I can read all of the queer books in the world, or all of the queer women books in the world, or even all of the ones that I want to read. I will probably not get around to before I die. And that's a great feeling, because as much as I want there to be more, as much as we're lacking in certain genres and tropes, and obviously there's a lot of different representation that we need more of, it's a relief to see how much is out there already. Part of what I do online is really try to make other people aware of that and try to help people find the books that are going to blow their minds and are going to make them feel like they have a place in the world. That's sort of what I've been doing ever since that conversation, is just trying to help other people find the books that they need. So if you're queer and you haven't done the LGBTQIA booktuber tag, first of all, you should. The second of all, if you don't make videos or if you're not on BookTube, please leave me a comment and let me know what the first queer characters you saw in fiction were and what that experience was like. And thank you for watching.